Hello everyone, Burb here. With the current banner that just got released, having every single character in the game, it's pretty difficult to do an actual character guide on the banner character. So today instead we're going to do a two-part video where the first part is I go over the banner and who should pull on it, and the second part, a guide to every Umamusume ever. And don't get too excited, it is a generalized guide to pretty much some tips and tricks to think about when you're running any Umamusume. So, without further ado, let's begin a way too in-depth guide to every Umamusume ever. So, as for the banner, there's a few people that should pull on this banner. The pros of this banner is you can pity for any character at 200, but as a con and a major con, there's no rate-up character whatsoever, so every single character has the same chance of appearing. This is pretty much a bait banner for 90% of, I would say, Umamusume players, because if you've been playing this game for a long time, you most likely have a lot of characters. And also, and I think you really should think about it, you generally have characters that you really want to pull. So, the two people who should pull on this banner are the people who are unable or unwilling to spend $20. I understand there's situations that are beyond people's controls that they cannot put together $20. If you have the carrots, the free carrots, this is the time to go and pity for your Uma. The second choice is if you are completely new or very new to the game and have nearly every character locked and have no specific want. The last part being key, no specific want, because most likely you will not get the character that you are thinking of. If you have more than one character that you want, well, the 200 pity is not going to be good enough to grab both of those characters 9 times out of 10. For some math, the current state of the account is I have 19 characters out of the 45 3-stars that are on the banner, that I believe are on the banner, which means I have a 57.8% chance, just using simple division, of actually getting a new character. If I get a repeat, then I get a little bit extra stats, but I do not increase any of the game's content. So that's the problem, is that you get extra stats, which may make them a little bit better. We're talking sub 10% better, maybe like 5% better. But you're not actually unlocking any new stories. You're not unlocking any new playstyles. You're not even unlocking any new meta viability if you're into that, right? So if you're looking for a particular character, it's really bad. 45 characters means you have a 2% chance when you pull a 3-star that is the correct 3-star. It's not going to happen, let's be honest. That's lower than the rate of getting a 3-star. On this banner, if you pull the 200, you're expected, just using multiplication, that you're going to get 6 3-star characters plus the one that you actually pity for. So you are able to generally, expected value, you generally will get 1 3-star character every 33 1/3 pulls. If you were to buy those carrots, which is 5,000 carrots because you multiply it by 150 per pull, 5,000 carrots is $70. Or 7,500 carrots, it makes it $46 if you have any of the limited offers. And because carrots are fungible, which means that in the future, you could be using these carrots on any sort of support banner or Uma banner in the future that you like, eventually you will run out of carrots and be in a situation where you consider buying carrots. And this may push you over the hump at some point to buy carrots later, which means that instead of paying $46, what you could do is you could do the current banner if you specifically don't have that many wants and don't have many characters and are just looking for like that little dopamine hit of pulling a 3-star character, you can do the current New Year's banners. That's $20 because it's 1,500 gems, 1,500 carrots rather. Or if you have a specific character, what I highly suggest is in a month we're going to get the selector ticket. That is $20 as well, and you get to choose the character that you want. So, like I said, the two people that are only should pull on this banner are people who will not spend $20 ever in this game, and also people who are newer and have nearly every character locked. Those are the only two people that should pull on this banner. Everyone else, wait for the selector ticket or pull on a banner for a character that you like in the future, and you will eventually get characters that are off banner. So with that, that is the banner review. I'm going to grab a bit of water before we get into the guide to every Umamusume ever. So, how to build every Umamusume ever. Really, this is a guide on how to build John Umamusume, the general Uma. Nope, I'm not talking about John Umamusume. John Umamusume II or John Umamusume Cinderella Gray. Like I said, this is every Umamusume. Every Umamusume comes with stat bonuses. These stat bonuses are multiplicative with your cards, so that means that they have greater effect than what is originally seen. These always add up to 30%. And in general, you will be strong in trainings that include the stats that have the bonuses. So if you're good at speed, you're good at speed taps and wit taps. If you're good at stamina, if you have stamina bonus, you're good at stamina and power taps. My personal favorite, if you have power bonus, you're good at speed taps, power taps, and guts taps when they happen. If you have guts bonus, you're only good at stamina and guts. And if you're at wit, you're only good at wit, but wit is hard to come by and wit gives you recovery. So generally, wit bonus is very good. The general belief is that speed and wit generally are the best stat bonuses to have, but that is because most of the cards that people pull for are speed and wit cards. So they want to be strong in those speed and wits. Any stat bonus is good. You just generally have to run cards that support them. And you may be thinking, well, I've been running speed and wit my whole life, right? Well, this is where you have sparks come in. Generally, you want to, and you'll find greater value in sparks when you place them away from your stat bonuses. So if you have a big amount of power bonus, you may want to, if you don't have speed bonus, put them in speed. What this does is, instead of running a 3-speed 2-wit deck because you need, or like in a long CM, 3-speed, like Rico and a stamina card, right? You can drop a single speed card and maybe run a double power deck, or run a single power, single stamina deck, or even run like a guts card. By putting sparks in places where your bonuses are not, you're able to run more cards that support your bonuses. And there's some really weird stuff you can do that is very low percentage, like guts maxing with characters with high power bonus, right? Or even running like a triple power double wit deck. I've done that before, and you just get ridiculous stats on all 4, assuming your Kittison actually goes to speed. So there's a lot more experimentation in this game than people are actually thinking about. But the general rule, and because it's so easy to build and it's so comfy to build, a lot of people like wit and speed. That being said, every single UMA is very viable for this reason. Up next, aptitudes is pretty simple. If it has an E aptitude or greater, you can naturally give it to A, because 1 star is 1 aptitude and 10 stars out of the 10 stars is the maximum. So basically using 4 of your parent slots out of 6 to get the stars up to that level. We'll get it from E all the way to A, D, C, B, A. Generally, Cygames places UMAs in specific roles, usually with their historical counterparts. So it is very easy to build, let's say, this example, which I believe is Winning Ticket. I could be wrong. Yes, I believe it's Winning Ticket. In the turf medium races as a pace chaser or late surger. You can run any character anywhere, but like Dirt G is basically only going to go to Dirt C. So you require 2 pink sparks, and until you have high affinity on your parents, it's going to be very difficult to get that even to A, let alone S. So the closer you are to A, the easier it is to build a character. Simple as that. All right, ultimate abilities. These are the unique abilities that every single UMA has. These generally fall into 3 categories: a speed skill, a acceleration skill, or a recovery skill. In general, speed skills are broken up into mid-race speed skills and late-race speed skills. These are just basically the phase of the race that they proc. Characters like Gold Chip and Bakashin generally go in the mid-race. Mid-race speed skills are considered to be very, very, very good, but sometimes sort of unreliable because their timings can be slightly off, or they generally have harder to proc conditions. But they have the option to speed carry over a lot of times, which means that their duration extends from the mid-race into the acceleration zone. Characters like Ogiri Cap and Winning Ticket, when it procs, are late race speed skills because they usually proc in the late race to close out the game. These are, in my opinion, the most fun to watch because your UMA will shoot from the back of the pack all the way to the front of the pack after in the last 400 to 200 meters of the race. Ogori Cap is a particularly strong example because the only condition on it is 200 meters and 2nd through 4th. So position-based requirement that's pretty lax, and 200 meters happens in every single race, and so a very good late race speed skill. Acceleration skills, acceleration ultimates, are very potent when they work. So they are timing based, and they usually are track based. So for example, Measure Orion's Let's Pump Some Iron is very good in the next CM because it specifies a late race corner. The only time that the corner is in the late race is this little 33 meters place where the corner overlaps the late race, which means it has very, very good timing 100% of the time. And when it procs on Measure Orion, if you somehow get it to dirt, it gives you a ridiculous amount of acceleration that basically gets you to max speed about 200 meters before everyone. These are incredibly potent skills when their timing is effective. However, some characters on different maps have zero benefits to their ultimates because, well, they proc at the wrong time. Measure Dober actually specifies a second condition where it is if the final corner is in the mid-race, it will proc on that corner. And the duration being only 4 seconds does not get you all the way to the acceleration zone, which means that the only thing that moving past and beyond actually gives you is a cool little flashy thing on the side that had a nice little animation and possibly tail-held eye proc. Nothing else. Not very good when it's not the maps that they are meant to be on. Recovery skills generally are considered the worst, not because they are bad, but because they give you the least amount of actual stuff towards winning the race. What they do give you is flexibility. So in medium and long races, you will not have to get in a gold recovery a lot of times because it comes one in the kit. Characters like Super Creek and even Haruurara have these, and they can basically substitute it for corner recovery, swinging maestro, breath of fresh air, etc. So 2 people very good with this, very high skill players that are using wacky decks because you do not have to run the standard Super Creek or Rice Shower to get your swinging maestro. You can run other stamina cards that have speed skills, like mid-race or late race speed skills. The other type is new players because you're able to run stuff like Manhattan Cafe or my own Top Gun Stamina that don't have access to swinging maestro, and you can use your borrow slot for other places. So long CMs, Super Creek is an incredible option for new players because you can run the cards that you have and you don't have to borrow Super Creek, which you can't player, but you don't have to borrow Rice Shower for swinging maestro. Super Creek also comes with swinging maestro. You understand the idea. So these are the 3 types. The last note on ultimate abilities is that when you inherit them, they generally are greatly nerfed. So some characters like Gold Chip, they're nerfed to a point where they're almost completely unusable. If you look at Gold Chip, they are cut in half almost for the duration, and the effect is cut in to 20%, which means that you are essentially getting 1/10, it's closer to 1/8 of the actual effect. And it basically means that when you pay 180 skill points for this skill, you're getting practically nothing. This is by design for Cygames on certain ridiculously powerful horses like Gold Chip because her ultimate is so good, not to make sure that it goes on every single end closer. Some characters pretty much ignore the rule that you cut your duration in half and you cut your effect in half to make it a quarter. A third to a quarter is standard, like Oguri Cap, because if you look at Oguri Cap, when you inherit Triumph and Pulse, the duration goes from 5 to 3, which is 60%, and the target speed goes from 0.45 to 0.25, which is better than a white skill. So if you get a decent amount of hints on this, even though it's a little more expensive, sometimes, it's going to be closer to 140 with like 3 hints, right? That's equivalent to a white skill, but you're getting 0.25 instead of 0.15 target speed. So a lot of times when you have a parent of Oguri Cap, if you get enough hints, it's better than taking a white speed skill because it has such an easy condition to hit. 200 meters in the front of the pack, which is usually a win condition, is being in the front of the pack in the late race. That's where you want to be. Other characters like Super Creek, the effect is so specific that even though it's cut in half, right, it has its own specific use. So stamina recovery 0.75 becomes 0.35, which is cut in half, but it essentially bridges the gap between a gold recovery skill and a white recovery skill. If you are a page chaser and you're right on that borderline of stamina where you don't really need that gold recovery skill, but it's just iffy enough that you want a little more than a white recovery skill, maybe in that area where you get 2 white recoveries, you're going to be able to buy Pure Heart instead, get 0.35 instead of 0.15. Granted, there is 2nd through 4th positioning, right? But when you do that, you're not going to have to spend the full 350 points on a gold recovery skill. You're going to be spending 150 points on it, and you can use those 200 points in different locations to pick up more mid-race speed skills or late-race speed skills. Some characters, namely the acceleration options, just are strong enough that even when you half the duration and half the effect, they are strong enough on other characters that, in conjunction with their speed ultimates, make them formidable foes as different parents instead. So Pump Iron and Shooting for Victory, generally strong enough on their maps when they work that you will pick them up on your parents just simply because of that. Finally, every single character has a skill suite. The skill suite will be roughly 2 golds, usually. Some exceptions, like Silent Suzuka has, the additional green for the events, and generally a slew of white skills. A lot of times they kind of try to aim you towards a certain play style. Taiki Shuttle, for example, has 3 white mile speed skills, as well as 2 gold mile speed skills. So, what does this mean for Taiki Shuttle? Well, that means Taiki Shuttle is one of the best medium horses in the game because her ultimate works on almost every medium track, and her event makes you run medium races to get the strongest pace tracer acceleration in the game head on. Yep, Cygames made the mile horse, probably one of the best medium horses in the game. Characters that have generally generic, good mid-race or late-race speed skills are usually very good. For example, Tamamo Cross is a very good example of a very good all-rounder horse because she has Tail 9. So Tail 9 is tail held high, which is good because you will always proc multiple skills in the mid-race, like always. So this skill is good on every single track and every single roll. In addition, she comes with a slew of different styles, right? In Late Surger, she gets a mid-race speed skill. In End Closer, she gains a specific acceleration. Notably, characters with acceleration options, specifically ones that are very hard to get, such as Head On, Straightaway Spurt, or On Your Left, may have additional value because it'll open up deck slots. You won't have to run Sweep Tosho SSR for the 50-50 on Tamamo Cross, or go for Parents for Straightaway Spurt because she comes with it already. In general, characters will have weaknesses. So, Tamamo Cross, if you look, when you play her Late Surger, she doesn't have an acceleration option. When you play her End Closer, she has Tail 9, but she weakens her mid-race greatly because she doesn't have Fast and Furious available to her. So you're going to have to get Daring Strike on her instead. Generally, you want to run cards that have the weakness of your character that you're building. Other than that, that's pretty much how characters go. A lot of characters have pretty easy careers. Taiki Shuttle, for example, the shorter horses generally have easy careers because it's pretty easy with the career bonuses to get past mile and short races. Whereas some characters like Rice Shower in particular, Mayano Top Gun as well, have an absolute gauntlet of long races in the late that they require winning. A lot of runs in Rice Shower will just fail if you're not paying attention because you do not have enough stamina. It's as simple as that. Characters like Ogiri Cap have goals that you can choose which races that you do, and these are the strongest because you have the flexibility to pick races that you want, and you get the bonuses to those races in addition to the little extra bonus of actually satisfying the condition. One more bit of water. So this has been the guide to every Umamusume ever. In conclusion, every character is viable, so you use the characters that you like, particularly in the aptitudes that they're good at for ease of use, right? You generally want to use cards that match stat bonuses whenever possible. There's some situations, like in long CMs, where you're forced to use stamina cards or power cards in order to reach stamina goals, and that may not allow you to actually take this benefit into account. And try to use sparks away from stat bonuses whenever possible. Finally, you want to use cards with skills of opposing types to the ultimate. So if your ultimate is a mid-range speed skill, you may want to consider, if you have it and you do not sacrifice too many stats, you may want to consider using skills that are either acceleration or late race speed skills. If your Uma comes with good acceleration options, you really want to run mid-race speed skills or late race speed skills. A good example of this is in the current CM of Capricorn, right? On the sprint CM, to make a very good El Contrapasa, you really, really want mid-race speed skills in order to get her into second place, because her ultimate will carry you in acceleration for the rest of the game. And finally, you want to use cards to fill gaps from gold skills. So if you do not have on your left on a late surger, you generally want to use Nice Nature Wit. If you do, you may be able to use some mid-race speed skills, or like, I don't know, Marvelous Sunday Power for Fast and Furious. As a final note, John Umamusume Cinderella Grey is absolutely broken. She has a ridiculous ultimate that always procs, is very good in the late race, is incredibly inheritable, has one of the easiest careers that is also very, very flexible. You can run as many or as little amount of races as you want. And of course, Oguri Cap is overpowered. So congratulations. Thanks for watching. We have solved Umamusume. Just run Oguri Cap and you will win the game. So with that, thanks for watching. Burb out.